Welcome back, the followers of Stoic Wisdom by Zeno. You've been there, haven't you? Giving everything, draining yourself dry, only to be left in the shadows, wondering if they ever saw your worth. You've sacrificed your peace, your time, your energy, all to chase someone who never truly cared. Like a candle burning at both ends, you've given everything to light their way, only for them to snuff you out when the flame got too close to their comfort. And yet, you stayed. You stayed, hoping they'd finally see you, hoping they'd finally understand the depth of your devotion. But what happened? They walked away, indifferent, like it meant nothing. You were always the one to bend, to adjust, to put yourself second, always the one to show up, to answer, to fix. You gave them your all. Your kindness, your patience, your heart, and in return, you got nothing but disregard. They saw you as permanent, something they could always push to the side without consequence. But here's the bitter truth. In that silence, in that moment when you disappeared from their life, something changed. Your absence is a cold wind now, sweeping through the empty space they thought would always be filled. And no matter how much they pretend, no matter how they mask their indifference, that silence is suffocating them. It's like walking through a dense fog they can't escape. Every step they take reminds them of what they've lost. They thought you'd always be there, but now you're gone. And that emptiness? It's louder than anything you ever said. You know, silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's a weapon, subtle but devastating. It's the pause between the thunder, the stillness before the storm. When you pull away, you're not just taking a break. You're making them face what they've discarded. And that, my friend, is where the real power lies. Like a thief in the night, your silence steals the one thing they thought they could always control. Your presence. Now, they're drowning in it. The regret they felt when they realized you were really gone is the same as standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the fall they chose to ignore. The mask they wear, pretending they don't care, is nothing more than a fragile shell. Underneath it, they're struggling to breathe. But don't you dare break that silence, because the moment you do, you give them back the power to play the game. Let them sit in the discomfort of their own choices. Let them feel the weight of their rejection. Your silence is the reckoning they never saw coming. So, if you're ready to embrace your power, to stop settling for less, and to truly transform your life through the wisdom of silence, this is your moment. Hit that like button and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno, because you're about to step into a journey of strength, clarity, and inner peace that can only be found by mastering your own silence. Don't miss out on the lessons that will change everything. This is just the beginning. Number 1. When you go quiet, they start to feel the fire. You've bent over backward for them, haven't you? You've given and given, only to find yourself standing in the middle of a storm, watching them walk away without a second thought. It feels like you've been fighting a battle no one even acknowledged. You sacrificed your time, your energy, your very essence, all in the hope they would recognize your worth. But instead, you were treated like a backup plan, something they could take for granted, always knowing you'd be there to pick up the pieces when they needed you. It's like you were carrying their burden, always stepping in, always the one to comfort, to fix. You thought if you were patient enough, if you loved enough, they would finally come around. But what did you get in return? A cold shoulder, indifference. It was as if the kindness you offered was never truly seen, only used when it suited them. You gave your heart on a silver platter, and they didn't even flinch when it was tossed aside. But here's where it hits differently. You reached a point where enough was enough. You stopped, not because you were weak, but because you were tired of chasing after someone who never bothered to catch up. You stopped texting, you stopped calling, you disappeared, and in that silence, in the space you created, something began to stir. Your absence became louder than any word you could have said, heavier than any plea you could have made. It's funny how people think silence is just the absence of noise. But silence is a force of its own. Silence is a mirror that forces them to look at themselves. When you walked away, when you became invisible in their world, they were forced to face what they took for granted. Your absence is the weight on their chest, the darkness they can't escape, and it's suffocating them, whether they admit it or not. Now, you may be thinking, but what if they don't care? What if they move on without me? Trust me, that fear is real. It eats away at you. You start to wonder if they ever truly appreciated you in the first place, if they even feel the loss of your presence. Here's the truth. If they don't feel it now, they will. The absence of your energy, your warmth, your presence, it's a void they can't fill with distractions or pretenses. Eventually, it catches up with them. Like a house built on sand, their carefully constructed reality starts to crack, and when it does, they'll realize they let go of something irreplaceable. But don't make the mistake of jumping back in too soon. Don't break the silence. Don't pick up the phone. Let them sit in their own discomfort. Let them feel the burn of what they've lost. Silence is not weakness. It is the greatest weapon you can wield. The poet Rumi once said, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in new form." Your silence is that new form, reshaping their world into something unrecognizable, something they can no longer control. When they're left to stew in their regret, they'll start to second-guess everything. Every conversation, every moment they took you for granted, every time they left you hanging. And the more time passes, the more they'll realize that you were never just an option. You were the foundation they didn't appreciate until it crumbled beneath them. And if they're pretending to be fine, if they're acting like they don't care, that's just a mask. That indifference is nothing but a fragile shield to protect their own fragile ego. Inside, it's a different story. The silence that you created is gnawing at them. It's the weight of every unspoken word, every unreturned text. They can't avoid it. It's like standing in the middle of a field during a thunderstorm and pretending the storm doesn't exist. The longer they wear that mask, the harder it is to breathe. They can fool everyone else, but deep down, they know what they've lost. In fact, it's probably the most painful part of all. You've seen it before. Someone acting like they don't care, putting on a show for the world, when all along they're just trying to keep the truth buried beneath a mask of indifference. But here's the thing. Silence forces them to confront that truth. They have to face the fact that you're not coming back, that you're no longer the backup, the safety net, or the one who will always catch them when they fall. But let me tell you this. If they don't feel your absence now, they never will. If they can't see the value of what you gave, if they can't recognize the depth of your love and loyalty when you're gone, then they were never worthy of it in the first place. That's a hard truth. But it's the truth that frees you. And once you realize it, once you accept it, you won't be the one chasing anymore. You'll be the one they'll be chasing. And here's where it gets even more powerful. When they feel that sting of regret, when they finally understand what they've lost, you won't be waiting by the phone. You won't be waiting for them to come crawling back. You'll be moving forward, stronger and more sure of yourself than ever. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. This silence is not just a reflection of what they've lost. It's a testament to your strength, your growth, and your ability to walk away from something that no longer serves you. Remember, as the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Your silence is your strength. And when they realize it, when they finally face the reality of what they've done, that's when they'll understand the true cost of losing you. So stand tall, don't look back. Your silence is your power. Keep it, own it. What do you think of the power of silence as a tool for transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno for more life-changing insights. Number 2, when they pretend to move on, but you know they're drowning in regret. So, here you are. You've gone silent. You've cut the ties, stopped the messages, stopped checking in. You've given them the space they never asked for, but desperately need. And what do you see? The mask, the cold indifference, the pretend smiles, the posts on social media, the conversations with friends, all designed to show the world they're perfectly fine, that they don't need you, that your absence doesn't matter. But deep down, you know the truth. Behind that mask, behind that carefully constructed facade, they're struggling, they're sinking. Here's what you need to understand. This isn't about them being fine. This is about them trying to convince themselves that they're fine. It's like a house built on sand, a facade that crumbles under the weight of reality. They're playing a dangerous game of hide and seek with themselves, hoping that by pretending you never mattered, the pain of your absence will just disappear. But it doesn't. The emptiness they feel, it's growing. You've seen this before. It's the quiet before the storm. When a person has been so used to having you in their life, your silence becomes the storm they never expected. It shakes their core, it rattles their ego, and the more they try to convince themselves that they're unaffected, the more the walls close in. You're not here to make them understand immediately. No, you're here to make them feel the weight of their own actions. You've stopped trying to prove your worth. You've stopped running in circles hoping they'd notice. And now, they have no choice but to sit with the consequences of their own choices. Their pride is keeping them locked in a cage of denial, but inside, they're unraveling. They're like a balloon filled with nothing but air, floating on the surface, pretending to be full. But inside, there's a vacuum that nothing can fill. Here's the question that's going to start eating at them. What did I lose? Every time they think about it, every time they glance at their phone and see your name is gone, that question starts to echo louder, and they're going to be forced to answer it. The problem is, they can't, because the moment they admit they were wrong, the moment they acknowledge your value, their pride shatters. They can't show weakness. They can't admit that they were the ones who let you slip through their fingers. So, they hold on to the mask, pretending that they're unaffected. But this mask isn't fooling anyone, especially not you. It's like trying to cover up a forest fire with a single bucket of water. They might appear calm on the surface, but underneath there's chaos. There's a storm of regret, doubt, and confusion brewing. The more they pretend, the more they feel the weight of your absence. It's like a person walking through a fog, blindfolded. They're trying to move forward, but they can't see the path ahead. Every decision they make now feels hollow because they can no longer take your presence for granted. And that discomfort, that's the silent power of your absence working its way through their mind. You might start to think, should I reach out? Maybe they really don't care, or worse, what if they've moved on for good? You start doubting yourself, wondering if the silence was the right move. But let me tell you this, don't break the silence. Their mask of indifference is exactly that, a mask. It's a defense mechanism designed to protect them from facing the reality of their own loss. If you break the silence, you give them back the control they've lost. You return to the game, and they get to play by their rules again. Your silence is making them confront the truth they're terrified of, that they've made a huge mistake. Imagine this like a game of chess. You've taken your pieces off the board, waiting for them to make a move. They're sitting there, confused, unsure of how to proceed, because they've underestimated your strength. They think that by pretending to move on, they can push you back into the role of the one who chases, the one who compromises. But here's where you outsmart them. You're not playing their game anymore. Instead, you're letting them sit with the uncomfortable truth. You're making them question everything they thought they knew. Because if they're pretending to move on, deep down, they know they've made a grave mistake. They're asking themselves, how could I let go of something so real? How could I have treated someone who cared for me this way? The silence you've chosen is the hardest lesson they will ever learn. It's the cold water that shocks them awake. The longer you stay silent, the more they realize what they took for granted, and the more they understand that no matter how hard they try to act unaffected, your absence is digging a hole in their soul that nothing else can fill. If they truly loved you, if they truly cared, this silence will become unbearable. They will start to feel it. They will start to regret the way they treated you. But if they don't, if they can walk away without a second thought, then that's the answer you've been looking for. Sometimes silence isn't about them coming back. It's about showing you that you deserve someone who sees your worth from the beginning, not when they've already lost it. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." Your silence isn't just about punishing them, it's about showing them the truth of their own actions. And in the end, whether they come crawling back or not, you've already won. You've reclaimed your power, your peace, your dignity, and if they're not worthy of it, then the silence is the gift that keeps on giving, because you get to walk away stronger, wiser, and more focused than ever before. So, stay quiet. Let them face their own regrets. Let them wear the mask until it cracks. And when it does, you'll be standing there, unshaken, knowing that the silence you created was the loudest statement of all. Number 3, the regret that stings, worse than the rejection. So here's where it hits them, the weight of their regret. At first, they tried to wear a mask, pretending it didn't affect them. They smiled in public, laughed with others, posted their victories on social media like nothing had changed. But that act, it's starting to crack. Now, behind closed doors, the silence isn't just uncomfortable. It's suffocating, it's crushing. Every time they sit in the stillness, they hear the echo of their own choices, echoes of the person they pushed away, the person they thought would always be there. Regret is a bitter pill to swallow. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the fall you chose not to heed. And that fall, it's inevitable. The moment they realize your absence isn't temporary, their stomach drops. The pride they once held so tightly starts to feel more like a prison than a shield. They can't undo the harm. They can't rewind the clock. You were the one constant, the one who loved without limits, and now that love is just an empty space where they once took you for granted. You see, regret isn't a quick flash of guilt. It's not a fleeting moment of oops that passes by. No, regret settles in like a fog that won't lift, slowly suffocating everything around it. It's the realization that they didn't just lose you, they lost something irreplaceable. It's like trying to grab water with a hole in your hands, or chasing a shadow that keeps slipping through your fingers. The harder they try to ignore it, the more it gnaws at them. In their private moments, they'll relive the mistakes, the moments they could have treated you better, the times they took you for granted. Each memory, a jagged stone in their chest. It's like walking through a field of landmines, each step a reminder of what they lost. They'll replay every argument, every slight, every opportunity they had to show you appreciation, and they'll feel the burn of knowing they missed their chance. And here's the kicker, they'll never tell you. They'll never admit how much they regret letting you slip through their fingers. The mask they wear, those smiles, those indifferent posts, are just an illusion. They're afraid that if they show too much weakness, if they show how badly they messed up, it'll be over for them. So they keep up the act. They keep pretending they're fine. But you know better. You know that behind that mask, they're just waiting for something to change. They're waiting for you to come back, for you to break the silence. They're praying you'll forgive them, that they can somehow convince you they were just going through something. But in their heart, they know that's a lie. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, what if they really do regret it? What if they finally wake up and see my worth? What if they come crawling back, begging me to return? And that's a valid fear. It's natural to wonder if you're making a mistake by holding your ground, by staying silent. But let me remind you of something powerful. Regret doesn't always translate to action. Just because they feel it doesn't mean they'll change. Sometimes the weight of regret is just too heavy for them to bear. It sinks them deeper into their own pride, making it harder for them to reach out. They're trapped in the very thing that led them to this point, their own fear of vulnerability. If they truly valued you, they wouldn't need you to teach them this lesson. Regret doesn't make them deserve another chance. It just makes them uncomfortable. And while they sit there feeling the sting, wondering if they've lost something real, you're over here becoming the version of yourself they could have had, stronger, sharper, unshaken. You're not the same person who bent over backward for them. You're someone who learned the power of silence, of self-respect. You've given them their time. You've given them their moment to feel the weight of their mistakes. And now, it's their turn to sit in the fire they created. You might feel the temptation to check in, to see if they're okay, to ease that discomfort you sense in them. But don't. Your silence isn't just about making them regret their actions. It's about reclaiming your own peace. Every time you break that silence, you hand them back the power. You stop them from confronting the truth of what they lost. And believe me, they need that confrontation. They need to sit in the realization that the person who always gave them everything is no longer there to feed their ego, to rescue them from their mistakes. What's worse than regret? The realization that your actions were driven by fear, by insecurity, and by a lack of true self-worth. If they had truly seen your value from the start, they wouldn't be standing here, watching you walk away, feeling like they've lost everything. Regret is the silent killer of pride. It's the realization that they've lost something real, and they don't know if they can ever get it back. So, here's the truth you need to hear right now. You are not the one who's lost. They are. They're the ones drowning in their own regret, trying to figure out how to undo what they've done. But they can't. And deep down, they know that. They can pretend to be fine. They can throw up that mask of indifference. But the reality is, they're facing the hardest truth they'll ever have to accept. They lost you, and nothing will ever be the same again. So, let them feel that. Let them sit in their regret. Because in the end, you're the one walking away with your dignity, your strength, and the knowledge that you never settled for someone who didn't recognize your worth. And now, if you're ready to take control of your life, to stop letting your past define you, hit that like button and subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno. It's time to rise from this, to learn the art of mastering silence, of moving on, and of understanding that true strength lies in knowing your own value, without needing anyone else to validate it. Let's walk this journey together, because the best version of you is just getting started. Number 4. The weight of their regret will crush them. The truth is, regret isn't something they can hide from. It's like a shadow that follows them wherever they go, growing longer and darker the more they try to escape it. You know, the kind of regret that gnaws at you in the middle of the night, when the world is quiet and you can't avoid the truth anymore. This is the point where they realize the cost of their actions, and it's a price they never thought they'd have to pay. At first, they might try to shrug it off. They might act like they're unaffected, like it's all water off a duck's back. But deep down, they're feeling the weight of your absence pressed down on them, a weight they didn't see coming. It's not just loneliness they're dealing with, it's the haunting awareness of their own mistakes, and they can't escape that no matter how hard they try. You've disappeared from their life, and now the silence is louder than any words you could have said. Let's face it, no one ever thinks they'll regret losing something until it's gone. When it's right in front of them, they take it for granted, as if it will always be there. But when it's gone, it's like they've lost their footing on solid ground. They're standing on the edge of a cliff they never saw coming, looking down at the fall they didn't expect. And now, with every passing day, the silence between you becomes an abyss they can't cross. But here's where it gets interesting. Regret doesn't just hit them once. It hits them in waves. The first wave comes crashing in when they realize you're not going to come running back. They thought you'd always be there, like a safety net, always ready to catch them when they fell. They took your presence for granted, never considering the possibility that one day you might just be gone. But now that you're silent, they're scrambling to figure out how to fill the emptiness you left behind. They can't ignore the void, and it's suffocating them. It's like they've been walking through life with their eyes closed, never truly seeing the value of what they had until it's too late. And now that they're finally awake to the truth, they have to live with the consequences of their own blind choices. The regret is a weight on their chest, a constant pressure they can't escape. It's like being trapped in a room with no doors, no windows, and no way out. The only thing they have left to do is face it. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In this case, their reaction is one of guilt and frustration. They can't change what they've done, and that's what makes it so painful. The more they reflect on the times they took you for granted, the harder it becomes to breathe. Regret is like an uninvited guest that shows up at the worst possible moment. And unlike a guest, it doesn't leave when you want it to. You might be wondering, should I reach out? Should I ease their pain? Don't do it. The greatest gift you can give them right now is your silence. Let them sit with the consequences of their actions. Let them feel the weight of the loss they never thought they'd experience. The moment you break that silence, you rob them of the chance to truly understand what they've lost. Silence is the teacher, and the lesson they need to learn is one that can only be taught by absence. Think of it like this. Regret isn't just an emotional state. It's a state of being, a deep, existential feeling that gnaws at the core of who they are. When you leave their life, you force them to confront the reality that their actions have consequences. This isn't about getting back at them. This is about making them face the truth they've avoided. They can run, they can pretend, but they can never outrun the fact that they let something precious slip through their fingers. You're the one who gave, who loved, who sacrificed. Now that you've withdrawn, they're the ones who are left to deal with the emptiness. That weight? It's a reminder that their disregard for you has cost them something they can never replace. But here's the most important part. This isn't about them. This is about you. It's about realizing that you've been a source of strength all along. While they're drowning in their regret, you're standing tall, focused on your own growth. You're no longer the one clinging to a relationship that only drains you. You've chosen yourself, and that's the greatest form of empowerment there is. The late philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But let's be real. The suffering they're feeling is no mere figment of their imagination. It's a very real, very heavy burden they must carry now that they've lost you. The silence you've created is a mirror, and they have no choice but to look at their reflection and see the person who pushed you away. Now, as they sit with their regret, you're moving forward, becoming stronger, more resilient with each passing day. They can't touch that. They can't undo their actions. And the more you focus on your own growth, the more you build a life that doesn't depend on their approval, the more that regret will gnaw at them. Because deep down, they know the truth. You were worth the effort. And as they continue to regret their mistakes, remember this: you don't need them to validate your worth. Their regret is not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of their own inability to see what was right in front of them. And now, all that's left for them is a painful realization that can never be undone. You've taken your power back. You've given them the silence they needed. And now, the only thing left to do is watch as they slowly crumble under the weight of their own regret. Stay strong. Stay silent. Let them feel it. Conclusion. As we wrap this up, remember this: your silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's a powerful tool that forces others to face their own actions and reflect on the value they once took for granted. You've chosen to step away, not because you're afraid of losing them, but because you've realized you deserve better than their disrespect. While they struggle with the weight of their regret, you're moving forward, becoming the best version of yourself. And that's the ultimate victory. The more you stand firm in your silence, the more they will be forced to confront the emptiness you've left behind. So keep your head up, stay focused on your growth, and don't let their indifference or guilt pull you back. Your path is yours to define, and your silence is the foundation of your strength. If you found this content empowering, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Stoic Wisdom by Zeno, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know how you're using silence as a tool for personal growth, or if you have any questions about this journey. We're here to support you every step of the way. Stay strong, stay silent, and keep moving forward.